So what is the meta in Dungeons and Dragons? That's what we're going to explore in this vlog. And first, a framework, a definition. This is borrowing from a wargaming term where the meta kind of reflects your tactics and your strategies based on the local community, based on where you play. If we're playing a war game and the focus is narrative play, we're trying to play a story, we're trying to play something historical, then we're going to build our armies, we're going to build our list based on that. That is vastly different. It is a different meta game. If we're playing competitively in a tournament, then I'm not going to look at the narrative at all. I'm going to look at how do my units stack up against other tournament lists. So this idea of a playstyle is influenced by your local meta. And every meta is a little bit different. I wanted to explore that concept. I wanted to pull that concept over and apply it to Dungeons and Dragons because one of the things that I always try to do as a player, as a DM, is to take this D&D thing and see what we can do with it, right? Let's create something memorable. So if we explore the meta, I kind of see it in three aspects. And how those bolt together, I think, really depends on your approach to play. The first meta is that company telling us how to play D&D, saying this is what D&D is, this is what you're going to buy, here's the subscription service you're going to use, and here's how you're going to play your game. And certainly that has tremendous power. Possibly, probably, maybe not the power it once had due to social media and other ways to connect virtual play and YouTube. So that company can push out certain ideas and certainly has sway based on the modules, based on the rules, based on the supplements that it releases. But pushing back against that meta, the very players themselves, where you're playing, what you're doing, and of course, to an extent, older or different editions of Dungeons and Dragons. And for now, we're just going to stick with D&D and not necessarily analyze the effects of other role-playing games and the pressure or the dynamic that creates on D&D. So we've got that company telling us how to play D&D. You can ignore it, but it does influence things. The second meta is the one that we're all familiar with, your local D&D playgroup. And this could be getting together with some friends once a week. This could be experienced in a hobby shop environment where it's Thursday night, so it's D&D night, and you've got 10 to 15 different DMs running games with 5 or 6 players each. It could be an organized event where you're playing D&D, different scales. I would push that also out to virtual play. So this type of meta is going to be shaped in the duality of the players. What type of characters do they play? What type of adventures do they enjoy? How do they approach D&D? And likewise, the dungeon masters themselves working with the players to run those type of adventures, to explore those ideas. And what's interesting about the local meta, what's interesting about your local meta is that after a while, it becomes normalized. As in, this is just how you play D&D. I can walk into a different gaming shop and play there every week, and over time, my player personality is going to blend with everybody else in the community, and it's going to help influence the type of games we want to play. The possibility here at the local meta level, I believe, is to try and constantly be expanding it, constantly bring in new players, constantly bring in new ideas. In that, I think, at least in my experience, there is a lot of crossover. In that other world, I play war games all the time. Huge focus playing war games. And a lot of my wargaming friends, they also happen to play D&D. I'm involved in the board gaming community. There are a number of board gaming enthusiasts that also play D&D. But then there are war gamers that enjoy more of a fantasy-based war game with miniatures. They might have heard about D&D. They've never played it before. Well, this is a great way to engage them and say, hey, you like this thing, I bet you're going to like this. Or likewise, playing board games, dungeon crawlers, and type of D&D-esque type games is a great way to say, you like this, you might like that. So on that local meta, while on the higher meta, we can just ignore everything from that company. On the local meta, you want to look to be bringing in and expanding new possibilities, new players, and embracing different play styles, because it's really going to mesh together and give you an idea. We explored this, and I pushed up to the archive here on the playlist, this idea as a dungeon master, Fritz as a dungeon master, whatever that is. Most, not all, of my games tend to focus on dungeon exploration, either directly a dungeon, we've got dragons, we've got dungeons, or it might be a wilderness quest that is eventually going to take you into dungeons. That's not to say I don't run other modules or other adventures, but like 8 out of 10 or 7 out of 10 is going to be dungeon-based. But as I run different dungeon-based modules, I try to break that out once in a while. Let's run a sea-based adventure. Let's run a wilderness-based adventure. Let's play kind of a role-playing narrative type thing, politics, city-based. I mean, we've got Hills Far Out. Here we go, right? Where we're never really going to roll for initiative, but we're going to make a lot of skill checks and see how we can play there. It might be the exact opposite with another dungeon master. They might be like, I don't run dungeon adventures. I'm doing the wilderness thing. I'm doing the city thing. So I try to pull myself out of that mold. I try to explore this D&D rule set in different ways. Expanding your local meta is a great way to do this. And now we've got kind of a middle ground. It's real, but is it real? Kind of sitting in between YouTube, forums, online communities. I'm putting aside virtual tabletop, virtual play. I would put that on the kind of tabletop meta. This idea of how people outside of your physical local community or your physical virtual community interact and do this D&D thing. And for me, YouTube has been a fantastic, an amazing resource, not only to connect and network, but watch other games played. And it might be just old school tabletop game, but it could be a virtual game. Get some ideas from other DMs. Get some ideas from other player characters. A previous vlog, I discussed how I enjoy playing a monk. I usually play a monk, not always, but when I do, I play a monk. Played it through AD&D, played it through 3.x, enjoyed it through 4, currently enjoying it through 5 now. If they had a monk in D&D Redbox, I would be playing that. It's been interesting to see, and I framework that because I would count myself skilled in the martial arts of D&D monkhood, but looking at other players on YouTube play a monk through different adventures, and some of those adventures I even know, no spoilers, I've played through them as a player or as a DM. To see them play a familiar character in different ways, that's worth the price of admission. That's really, really exciting. So within this framework of understanding how the meta influences D&D, the community, but also as players, what are we doing? And this is the question I'm asking you. This is the question I ask myself. What are we doing to build that meta, connect to that meta, expand that meta? How are we using this D&D thing to network and really open up the rule set, roll the dice, and see what we can do?